There are species on this earth that have existed for billions of years, long before humans.
And now that humans are here, species are going extinct faster than the natural rate, possibly resulting in the 6th mass extinction.
Come with us as we dive into some of the 40,000 species considered threatened or endangered.
We're not experts and we don't claim to be, but we are passionate and will try to deliver reliable research.
My name's Hannah.
And I'm Laila, and we're here to remind you that they're still here.
Hello everyone and welcome back to They're Still Here. This week we're going to be talking about the monarch butterfly, an endangered species in the United States.
I was just going to ask if you like butterflies.
I love butterflies. We've always had a garden growing up, and then I got a little garden that I got to plant alongside the house, and I would always pick flowers that I thought would bring butterflies.
And what did you pick? Like, how did you decipher that as a child?
I picked the pretty ones because I thought the butterflies would like them. Like, I always tried to pick the ones that were very bright and colorful and stuff like that, but I don't know if that was actually true. I don't know if they were pollinator like plants, so that's what would do it. I just thought they would appreciate the prettiness. So I'm going to tell some of the generic stuff about the monarch butterfly, and then Laila will go into more of the endangered status of it. We will start by saying the monarch butterfly was not classified as endangered until July 27th of 2022. Scientists have always kind of noticed the declining population over a few decades, so it's been a concern for a while, but that's when they were considered endangered. While there are a few subspecies of monarch butterfly, the one that we're going to be talking about and the one considered endangered is called the migrating monarch. Scientific name of that is Danaus plexippus plexippus. While monarch butterfly is just Danaus plexippus. You add the extra plexippus on for the migrating monarch.
Okay.
So what's interesting about these monarchs is they have one of the most sophisticated migration patterns of any butterfly and possibly any insect, because it is basically the same migration pattern as birds, whereas during the warmer months in the summer, they can be found in northeast United States and along in Canada, and then during the colder months, they migrate all the way down to Mexico, which is almost a 3,000-mile migration. They've tried to figure out exactly how they make their migration, how they know where to go. They don't know exactly how, but scientists theorize that it's just a mixture of the magnetic poles of the Earth as well as the location of the sun. What's interesting about that as well is the lifespan of the butterflies varies depending on the time of the year. Monarch butterflies in the summertime, in the warm months when they're more up north, don't live as long as the ones that are making the migration south. Monarch butterflies that are around during the warmer months live only for a few weeks, whereas the ones that take the migration south live 7 to 9 months. During the last warm month of the cycle, their yearly cycle, they basically can't reproduce again. They are the last generation for a while they make their migration. And then once they start migrating back north, then they can start reproducing again, and that's when their life cycle goes down to only a few weeks. I thought that was weird.
It's a back and forth, and how do they know when they should die sooner?
Right? And how does the body prolong itself for so much longer? That's crazy. Imagine if we went to all of a sudden, we can live for 1,000 years. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we're not bugs, so.
Valid. Wish I was.
Some days.
So with that, keeping that cycle in mind, in a year, there's usually about 4 generations of monarchs.
It's a lot of movement, I guess, I should say. A lot of mating, cocoons, and then they emerge mate, caterpillar, larvae, caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly.
Yep, they are the quintessential butterfly cycle of that's what they use in kindergarten to be like, here is the cycle of life. But they're very resilient as well, obviously making a 3,000-mile journey. But they've also been seen to travel, like fly a long ways in one go without taking a rest. Yeah, it was 130 kilometers or 80 miles in one day. The only place they can lay their eggs is on the plant called milkweed. It is a common plant. It usually has like a white interior, hence the name milkweed. But that is the only plant that they can lay their eggs on, and then that's what the caterpillars that hatch feed on. That's their only food source. When they eat the milkweed, there's a toxin inside of it. When they eat it as caterpillars, it kind of metabolizes inside of them, and it gives them like a bad taste for other bugs if they were to eat them, and it makes them distasteful. So it's kind of a defense mechanism.
They can also be poisonous because of the milkweed. So
And then just in general, their habitats are normally heavily forested areas. When they get to Mexico, they hibernate in the Oyamel forests. I apologize if that is not the correct pronunciation, but it's in like the mountains down in Mexico, and then they hibernate on trees where they cluster together, like thousands of them together on one tree to stay warm, and then they hibernate over the winter just on the trees. So there are currently, according to the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, the western monarch counted 233,394 on January 30th, 2024. There is a butterfly that looks incredibly similar to the monarch. They have very similar coloration. It's called the Viceroy butterfly. They say it's an example of the Mullerian mimicry in nature, where
is it Viceroy or Viceroy?
I don't know.
I know the Mac DeMarco song is Viceroy, but I don't know.
Sure, we'll go by Mac DeMarco, Viceroy. They have the similar orange with black markings, black and white markings. So if you see something, it could be a monarch or it could be a viceroy. Just try to make the distinction. That could be a fun... I don't know if the viceroy comes through the same areas, but they say that they look very similar and they mimic each other, which I think is interesting.
So I knew about this butterfly when I was little. We used to just call them false monarchs because I didn't even... Obviously, as a child, I didn't know it had a specific name or anything. Do you know how you distinguish them?
Yeah, I'm looking at right now. So it's difficult because they are very similar. The monarch kind of has more dots on the end of its wings, white dots, and it's kind of got bolder outline, I guess is the term you would use, like thicker lines on it. But yeah, they're incredibly similar.
Also, the conservation status of viceroys are least concern, so they are not... they're not a little worry yet.
They're doing fine, so they need to stop looking for sympathy because the monarch is endangered. They're like, look, I need help. I'm dying.
I am dying. Let's kind of talk about milkweed for a second. A lot of groups encourage people to grow milkweed. So especially if you're along the path of migration, milkweed is toxic. Monarchs are toxic. So even though they're like a beautiful creature, try to keep your pets away from them. Try to not only protect them, but protect animals from eating them. So, you know, if you're gonna grow like milkweed, try to grow it somewhere animals outside can't get to it, where your animals can't get to it. But a lot of what's going on is we're losing like milkweed. People aren't growing it. It's not growing in the wild. And so they can't lay their eggs, and they're finding less and less areas to continue the life cycle. There's also the issue of habitat loss. Not only are people deforesting parts of Mexico and California, but weather is becoming harsher in the recent years. So people do play a big part in it. And not only that, but in wildlife areas where these animals and bugs would normally thrive, they're becoming polluted. They're filled with cigarette butts and just trash. Any kind of milkweed you can plant would definitely help towards their conservation. So common milkweed, you know, they have butterfly milkweed, something called swamp milkweed. If you really want to learn a lot about how to help conserve monarchs, the monarchwatch.org, they are like really into the conservation of monarchs. So if you want to learn a little bit more about milkweeds or how to grow those kinds of things to help facilitate the life cycle of a butterfly, I would definitely check them out. They also get parasites and disease. So they can get parasites, some parasites or parasitoids. I've never heard that word before researching this. But so parasitoids lay eggs on whoever they're trying to host off of, and they can do it onto their larvae as well. So, and usually, not all the time, but usually parasites and parasitoids are invasive and actively like harming not only an endangered species, but like many species: earwigs, grasshoppers, crickets, centipedes, moths. People have those little like bags outside to catch the flies. Maybe you could put one of those outside your house if you're gonna grow milkweed or something. That could definitely help. Disease is another issue. So there's a parasitic disease called Ophorositis electroscura. I'm so sorry, that is probably very wrong. But it's basically like a spore. It's a spore that spreads through ingestion, and it basically like just grows into the butterfly. And sometimes it doesn't kill the butterfly, but it really screws up their lifespan and how well they can live and function. That one is kind of a harder one to stop because it's a spore, and you know, we can't really see those or look for them. So it's just something to more keep in the back of your mind as a reason why monarchs might be threatened right now. So what can we do? How can we help? So at your home, like we kind of talked about, you can grow plants for them. You can help facilitate that growth. You can try like more natural pesticides and make sure that whatever you're using as a pesticide or a herbicide, that you're not buying something that's gonna kill like butterflies and just like the little good creatures. Grow not only milkweed, but you can grow things that produce pollen for the already grown butterflies. Try not to attract predators to the area, so like don't put your bird feed right next to your milkweed or something. And even so, you know, some birds can eat the monarchs and not get poisoned. So like they'll eat them. But yeah, a lot of this is just fundraising like normal. So like, remember how I mentioned the monarchwatch.org? They are like a treasure trove of knowledge. If you can support them in any way, I'm sure they'd be happy to get support. And they do everything. They track monarch conservation, they track their migration, they give out milkweed plants, they have like a free milkweed thing going on. They have all sorts of numbers, all sorts of analytics. I didn't really know anything about monarchs as a child, but I remember seeing them, and I remember playing with them, and I remember being so excited when I would see one. So if we want to keep these little creatures keep them in our society and keep them healthy and growing and help their numbers, then we have to do all we can. And so just be careful to see what products you're using and what companies you buy things from, because if you look into the deforestation in parts of Mexico and California, I'm willing to bet a lot of your food and product come from those areas that you really don't realize come from that area. Like, I know avocados is a big one, and shame on me because I eat avocados like crazy. But maybe
it's so hard.
I know it is really hard to keep track of like
anything
who's doing
you look
what.
into, like, it's gonna be hurting something, which is the absolute awful part of everything.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. It's definitely unfortunate, but there are steps we can take, and so, yeah, those things on the smaller scale, if you can manage those things, then do it. And if you can't, then encourage your neighbors and your parents neighbors and businesses to do those things, because, like, if you live in a tiny apartment, I get it, you can't grow a whole garden, you know? But try to make an impact somehow, in any little way you can. And whether that's putting a fly bag outside to kill a bunch of flies, or gifting someone a milkweed, it can all help. And seriously, look at the path of migration as well to see when the butterflies are going to be kind of near where you live.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, I just pulled up a map to see when they'll be passing through Nebraska because even though I do live in an apartment, I'm thinking of maybe doing some sort of butterfly garden with like nectar plants. And obviously I don't think I can plant milkweed, but maybe a little butterfly garden. I also have an insect house. It's like a bird house, but for insects. I don't know if that would help the butterflies, but something for insects in general. Just out of curiosity, do you ever see monarchs there in Albuquerque?
I haven't seen any, but I was looking at the map, and apparently they do pass through New Mexico, but in the desert, there's not a lot of flora. There are plants, but it's kind of hard to grow plants in the soil here, because most of it is just sand and rock, and most of what I see growing is like pinon and prickly pear cactus. But I do see butterflies. I have seen butterflies. I've not specifically seen a monarch, but I'll also have to look at the map and see what time they're passing through, because maybe I can do something to help at that time. Also, just keep a little eye out for the little caterpillars, because
Oh, yeah.
because those little guys need help too. So it's not recommended to bring in any cocoons or anything you see, just because that could easily spread disease and stuff if you keep a bunch of cocoons in the same area. But if you see like a little guy who's kind of stuck, so their caterpillar is like a yellow, like a striped yellow, white, black one. If you see one kind of in a bad area, maybe help it move or something like that. And watch out for aphids, because aphids be killing them as well.
If you liked this episode, make sure to let us know.
Comments and suggestions can be sent to forestfriendsproduction@gmail.com.
All of the sources used for this episode will be listed in the description.
And thank you for listening to this episode of They're Still Here.